So again, welcome, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. It's Nikayla here, aka the host of Side Hustle Pro. You're in the right place. If you want to learn how to start your own podcast with zero experience, I'm getting ready to jump right into it so that we can get to the nitty gritty. I will be answering all of your questions. Feel free to put it in the Q&A field. That should be enabled. If for some reason it's not, just go ahead and put it in the chat. My teammate Joanna is in the building tonight, and she is going to be compiling all of your questions for me. So I'll be able to answer them. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I might minimize my video, you guys, to make sure we don't have any tech issues whatsoever while I'm sharing. But just, go ahead and give me a 1 in the chat if you can see my screen and if we're all good so that we can get started. All right. I am seeing you guys. All right. So 1 in the chat, if you can see my screen, my slides, let me know that we're good to go. All right. I see someone raise their hand and go ahead and put your stuff in the Q&A if you have any questions whatsoever. All righty. Cool beans. So again, you're in the right place tonight. We're going to chat about how to start your own podcast. And I am Nikayla, the host of Side Hustle Pro. So I have been doing my podcast now. You guys say you're unable to access the chat. You can see the screen, but the chat is disabled. All right. I feel like I can go ahead and get that. Oh, okay. So you know what, you guys, why don't you, if you have a question, put it in the Q&A field like you're doing, because I'm not sure what's going on with that at this very moment. So sorry about that. We'll have to, on the back end, figure that out for next time. But I can see that you guys are in the building. All right. Oh, and give me 1 second. Okay, I'm gonna do one thing. All right, so the screen is working. Hold on, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a second. I'm gonna pause the recording. We're back in business. All right, you guys can see everything. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen again. I feel like that happened last time. I gotta remember to do that. So as you can see, I hope you guys can see that you don't have to be super technical to excel at podcasting. Like, I've been podcasting now since 2017. I have a podcast called Side Hustle Pro. I have to date inching in on over 8 million downloads, and I am not a super techie person, but I make it work. And the main thing that matters when it comes to podcasting is what I'm going to cover tonight. So let's jump right into it. All right. So first of all, let me know who's here real quick. We're going to do these real quick, but I'm really curious, what brought you here. So let me know, 1, 2, or 3, if you've been thinking about starting a podcast for a while, but you're just overwhelmed with how to start, or you and your friends have a podcast idea. I know a lot of you might fall into this boat, and you want to make sure you do it right, right? You want to make sure you're checking all the boxes and doing everything so that you'll be successful. So give me a 2 if that's you. Or number 3, you have already started your podcast, or you're getting ready to start, and you want to make sure you're being strategic, okay? Let me know who we have in the building. All right. Okay, I see a lot of number 1s, a lot of number 3s, some 2s. All right, so we have a little mix of everybody. Cool, you're all in the right place. Like I've been saying, podcasting, there's so many different viewpoints that you can come from, but I'm glad you're here to join me tonight because listen, I just want you to make the most of your time. When I started my podcast, I was side hustling. I know that most of you guys are side hustling, and I want to make sure that you are just making the most of everything that you're doing so that you're using your time effectively. So I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second. Okay, I was just making sure that I am recording. All right, cool beans. So my goal for tonight is to teach you my tips, how to start podcasting with no prior experience like I did. I started with a mic in my living room, later moved to my bedroom, and I did that for 4 years before I moved into like my closet office setup that some of you have seen by now. So I'm going to walk you through how to set your podcast goals. It's very, very important that you do this, how to narrow down your podcast topic, and how to determine who your target listener is. Believe it or not, these are 3 steps that most people overlook. And they're the 3 most important things that you need to do before you start your podcast. And I'm also, of course, going to tell you how you can get coaching from me inside of the Podcast Moguls program. Now, Podcast Moguls is my podcast accelerator program. I'll share more about that with you. And if you'd like to join, you have the opportunity to do that at a promotional rate. So no surprises there, right? I'm not hitting y'all with no surprises. Of course, I'm going to share more about Podcast Moguls with you. Oh, and we're also going to have Q&A. So stick around for that. Like I said, drop your questions in the Q&A. I'm going to get to all of them. And then I told y'all I have a lot of bonuses, and these aren't even all the bonuses, okay? I'll also be sharing with you a Libsyn promo code. So with this code, you can start hosting your podcast for the next month and a half free, so you can test out this whole podcast world without paying a dime to host your podcast. So please stick around for that, all right? So now, let me give you a quick background. I'm not going to take too long with this. Like, I know you guys are like, get to the point, get to the point. And I'm going to get to the point. But I just want you to know how I got into podcasting. So 2015, I was graduating from the University of Michigan with my MBA. I had no idea I would be starting a podcast. I had no idea what I was going to do next because I was graduating with my MBA. I didn't have a job. I thought I was going to go to grad school and get this big job, but instead I was like down to like such a low balance in my bank account. I didn't know what my job was going to be, and I was moving back to DC to live with my then boyfriend, now husband, but I didn't have no income. I was just like back to square one, it felt like. So at that time, I started up blogging again. And I started to feel like I need to build my personal brand. If I'm going to get hired by employers, they are going to be looking for someone who can sell what she has to offer, someone who can immediately let them know who she is, what she brings to the table. Now, I knew I wanted to do this, but I wasn't really sure what that even entailed. How many of you have heard this elusive thing like build your personal brand? What does that even mean, right? So I did what all of you are probably doing tonight, or what anyone else who has a question does, is you seek out answers. So I went looking for answers for people who were further ahead of me. So I started following online branding coaches who were in the sphere of what I was doing, blogging, and people like Amy Porterfield, who you see on the left, people like Maya Elias, who you see on the right. Some of you may know Maya. And as I was doing that, for me, I realized there was a common thread of what I was interested in. So for you, even though you might have so many ideas of things that you want to podcast about, I guarantee you there is a common thread that you keep coming back to. For me, I love sharing the stories of Black women entrepreneurs. I personally wanted to hear more of these stories, specifically people who started out as side hustlers, because that's where I saw myself starting. I knew I wanted to get a job. I knew I wanted to have income while I started something on the side. So that's when the idea for my podcast, Side Hustle Pro, was born. And I now interview Black women entrepreneurs who scale from side hustlers to full-time profitable businesses. Now, by that point, when I finally launched, I launched the podcast in June of 2016. It's been 6 years now. It's crazy. So by that point, I had gotten a job. So my podcast was my own side hustle. And that job was working full-time at NPR. So ironically, or serendipitously, however you want to look at it, I led the digital marketing for other podcasts. So podcasts like How I Built This, Code Switch, and so many more, like all your favorite NPR podcasts, I was leading the digital marketing for. So as I was doing that, I really got to see the business side of podcasting, and I got to see how money is made in podcasting, specifically the sponsorship route. So I had that lens, and I said, okay, I want to study how I'm going to make money with my independent podcast. I know it's not going to be the same as how these podcasts are making money. So I need to learn more about this. Now, I couldn't find anybody teaching what I'm teaching now. I couldn't find anybody teaching how to be a podcast mogul. So instead, I had to invest in a 2-day event sponsorship class. So that class was all about how to get your events, like conferences, weekend retreats, things like that sponsored. And I said, hey, what the heck? It's in DC where I am. Let me just, take advantage of the fact that it's in the area and let me see if this can get me started in sponsorship. So it wasn't even podcast specific, but sometimes you have to start somewhere. I was very, very eager to learn. And I went to that 2-day intensive. I started pitching sponsorships. And from that, I was able to start earning income from my podcast. So that's how I did it. And then at the end of 2017, I was able to quit my job to podcast full time. So you can scroll back to December 27, 2017 on my Facebook page, and you can see this post, and you could also click this link to listen to that episode if you guys want to hear more about that process. So essentially, I have grown a lot since launching my podcast. Just this year in 2022, Side Hustle Pro was inducted into the Podcast Hall of Fame at the Podcast Movement Conference presented by Libsyn. And it was just an amazing, surreal moment in my life. And it's also a moment that cemented for me that I want to keep teaching this, that I want people to understand that this is so attainable, so achievable. Like, I did this as an independent podcaster. I did this with no network behind me, and you can too. So let's talk about how podcasting took me from graduating with no money, no job, to the Podcast Hall of Fame. So, like I said, I'm passionate about giving you the keys to launch your podcast. I am passionate about letting you know how to reap the benefits of this powerful platform. You can use podcasting as a launching pad to do so many things. Like, you can use it to pitch yourself as a media personality. You can do it to pitch yourself for a book. You can do it to speak on stages. You can, of course, get sponsorships. You can launch subscriptions, so many things, right? So step one, though, starts with setting those podcast goals. You can't do any of this if you don't sit down and map out what it is you want to gain from this platform, and also what it is you want to put into the world. So first, it starts with that, what's your why? I talked to you guys about that in the email I sent to you. I said, what's your why? Why are you even, starting this? What is it that you want out of podcasting? And I shared in that email to you that for me, I really wanted to network. In addition to hearing these stories and being inspired, because I saw myself as an entrepreneur eventually, it was such a great opportunity to network and to meet people. Like, I have such great relationships with people, all because I reached out for an interview. But what's your why? And also, please, I want you to breathe in this statement. Now, I didn't make this up, but this is the main sentence that I said to myself over and over again that helped me to get started with podcasting. And that is, done is better than perfect. I started with a microphone that cost maybe $25 in my living room. I had no soundproofing around me. I was just like, I want to do this interview thing. I don't know what the quality is going to be like, but as I learned and as I got better, I started to, adopt things that made my audio quality better. But guess what? Those episodes with the worst audio quality are still some of my top listened to episodes. Okay. So people are going all the way back, and they're listening, and they're loving, and they're continuing to grow and go through the show catalog and just see my growth. And that's a beautiful thing. So set a long-term goal for yourself. Okay. Do not start podcasting unless you put a long-term goal down. Write it down on real paper, okay? For me, I said I'm going to podcast for a year straight. I am, no matter what, no matter if I've had a long week, if I fall off, I'm going to get back up the next week. And that's what keeps you going, when you have a target to reach towards. If you just kind of start and you don't have a target to hit, if life comes at you, you know how hard adulting is, and stuff comes up, it's going to be easy to take that podcast off your plate, because you're going to say, okay, this is not important. This is just a hobby. I'm not getting paid for this. All those other things you tell yourself. You have to set that long-term goal, and you have to stick to it. Also, remember that you're here to tell a story that no one else can tell. No one else can tell what your podcast is going to be about quite like you. Yes, there might be other podcasts that talk about a similar thing, but no other podcast is going to feature your lens. So what I mean by that, take, for example, Side Hustle Pro. There are lots of other podcasts that talk about side hustles. Some existed before me, some have come up after me. And guess what? We all talk about side hustling from a different lens. Some people focus on just gig economy, like hobby side hustles. I focus on Black women entrepreneurs who scale from side hustlers to full-time profitable business owners. Huge difference, right? So there's room for you. You just have to tell a story that no one else can tell. And that starts with your secret sauce. So you know how I started this presentation? I want to share a little bit about me because that's my secret sauce. You knowing that I did this and I had this experience and I went to Michigan, go Wolverines, like somebody put in the chat, you knowing how we all connect, that's the same way your audience needs to know how they connect to you, because that's also what's going to keep them listening. How often have you recommended a show and then you've dropped a little nugget about the host that makes you like the host or what you like about the show, right? That is the same thing that is going to be needed for your podcast to stand out and get those loyal subscribers to keep coming back and coming back. All right. So that's step one. Step two is to let's narrow down this topic. Okay. I know some of you think you have a podcast topic, and I bet you after going through this lesson, you'll learn that, hey, I could stand to make it a little more straightforward. So you may be wondering, how do I go about selecting a topic? Step one, you have to think through certain questions. And these questions are, what would you talk about if you were not making any money? What are you passionate about? What do you have a strong opinion on? What do you have unanswered questions about? What's your expertise? What do people always ask your advice about? Who do you want to impact? And what do you want to be known for? So don't overthink the responses to these questions. Go ahead and take a screenshot, write it down, type it out in Google Docs, whatever you need to do, and start to write down your responses to this. The point of this exercise is not to have some perfect response, but is to get your wheels turning and for you to realize that, hey, I have a strong opinion about certain things. I have unanswered questions about this particular thing, though, and I would love to learn more about this. That what's your expertise part, don't get stuck on that. What I mean by that is, again, going back to your secret sauce, it is what people always kind of tap into you for, that you can start there, but also think about what about being a podcaster, what do I bring to the table that is my expertise? For me, it's my curiosity. I am naturally nosy, okay? I am nosy AF. Everybody in my life knows this. And now I have this opportunity to be mad nosy to people who I do not know, but I want to know and want to know more about, okay? So that's kind of my expertise. I've decided to claim that, but that curiosity makes me a natural storyteller. It helps me to help others tell their stories. So really, unpack what comes to mind when you see these questions. And again, if you allow yourself to be free and not think you need some perfect answer, you will really start to uncover the real answers. So after you've gone through those questions, write down your list of topics that come to mind. Start as broad as you need to. It's okay, throw things against the wall, everything you're interested in. But again, as you go through the questions, certain ones are going to keep coming back. So here are the questions again. Write down your list of topics, then narrow it down to 1 to 3 ideas, okay? So we're starting to get closer and closer to that overall topic now. So step 2 is you're going to conduct market research. And again, this applies to you even if you are about to start your show. This applies to you if you've already started your show, and it definitely applies to you if you haven't started your show. So what I mean by market research, this essentially means start Googling, start looking open up your Apple Podcast app or your Spotify app and start to research. You start to, put in the topic that you're interested in: motherhood podcast, Black motherhood podcast, queer podcast, any podcast topic that you're thinking about, Start to see what's out there, and then identify 5 to 10 other podcasts that talk about your topics. So again, there were other podcasts that talked about side hustling. There were other podcasts that talked about entrepreneurship and business, women in business, women of color in business. All of that was out there. Okay. So I started to make a list of those, and I started to listen to those. Okay. And you're going to need to listen to those as well, and really make note of the themes that are covered in the different episodes, and what are they not talking about? What will you cover that they don't? It's easy to see a podcast and think, oh, they've already got it covered. They're already talking about this topic. I can't do this. It's already out there. Please let me be clear here. I'm not talking about starting a podcast with the same name as somebody else. Now that doesn't make any sense, because you want your own real estate, you want your own you want your own trademark eventually down the line, way down the line. We're not talking about that right now. However, the overall topic that can be out there, because I guarantee you they are not talking about everything. There's a gap in what they're talking about, and that's what you are here to fill if you're interested in it. So remember, at this point, we have looked at 1 to 3 ideas, right? And then now we're just taking a moment to do some market research, to see who else is out there, to listen to some of their episodes, make note of what they're talking about, what they cover, and what you'd love to cover that they don't. In this process, again, you're going to find yourself gravitating towards certain things more than others. So now you are truly narrowing down your topic. Okay. So now, after you've done that, you should have a more clear picture of what you want your show to be about and what you want your topic to be. Okay. You can only do one. And what I mean by one is, even if your show is going to touch on different things, there has to be a thread that unites it all. There has to be an umbrella. It has to make sense. Make it make sense. Think of it as, when people go to share your show, what do you want them to say? Oh, you got to check out the Side Hustle Pro podcast. She talks to Black women entrepreneurs who scaled from side hustlers. You want them to be able to quickly give your blurb, okay? Not, oh, here's this show I listen to. They talk about finance sometimes. Sometimes they're comedy. Sometimes they talk about relationships. You know what I mean? That is vague and less convincing, right? So you really have to make sure your umbrella arc is very, very clear. Then step 3 in this process of narrowing down your topic is determining your unique lane. So again, what can you talk about that no one else can? Why are you the perfect person to tackle this subject? For me, again, it was my curiosity, the fact that I was going to ask the questions that some people might be embarrassed to ask. Some people might find dumb. Oh, I should know that already. Oh, that's a big technical term. You know, how many of us, when we hear a big word or a big technical term, we decide to bookmark it in our head for later to to look up, right? We don't want to look dumb. I decided that was going to be my role. I was going to be the person who I see myself as a bridge to information. Okay. So think to yourself, what can you talk about that no one else can? What are you going to do for your audience that no one else will? Why are you the perfect person to tackle this subject? And again, your topic and what you need to be doing will become more and more clear. So step 4, now you need to evaluate if your idea is a hit topic. And what I mean by hit topic, how do you know if you have a hit topic? First of all, you need to assess if it has an audience, if it's interesting and intentional, and if it tackles new ground. That is a hit topic. That's a topic that's going to land you on the charts, that's going to get people talking, that's going to get people sharing. Okay. So what I mean by having an audience, it is good if people are talking about what your show is going to be about. It's good if they're talking about personal finance. If it's good if they're talking about motherhood or adulting, as a person of color in corporate America. You know what I mean? Getting very specific, you guys. You can't make it just broad. Adulting, too broad. Red flag. But you have to make sure your topic has an audience. That means people are interested in this. Okay. If there's no competition for your show, you have to really evaluate, is there an audience here? Make sure it's interesting and intentional, okay? And you do that when you start to map out your content. What segments will you have? How will you make it interesting? How will you keep the people going? What will you do to structure that show? And finally, tackles new ground. So that's where you're going to add in your secret sauce, and you're going to add in the information that is filling in the gaps that these other shows are not touching on. So that's how you know you have a hit topic. So you want to evaluate this before you move forward with a topic. If you're getting ready to launch, go back to this and say, okay, what is it about our show that we need to fine tune? Does it have an audience? Is this interesting and intentional? Is it tackling new ground? All right, is this going to be a hit? Step 5, you absolutely have to evaluate the longevity of your topic. A lot of people don't do this. A lot of people do not think, is this something that I'm going to be talking about in a year or two? And, I know a lot of us don't like to pin ourselves into one thing, but when it comes to podcasting rewards time and consistency. So if this is something you're going to get bored with, or you just see yourself doing one season and then you'll be all talked out, it's not the right podcast topic for you. You want something that is going to be something you can talk about for as long as you choose to. So evaluate that by starting to say, will I be able to produce multiple episodes about this same topic? If this were a TV show, how many seasons would it have? Would it have 10 seasons, 2 seasons? What would that look like? You can even start to write down the episodes for your first 3 months of podcasting, first 3 to 6 months. Write down sample episode titles. So what would you cover? What kind of guests do you want to bring on? And what kind of episodes do you want to have? So real quick check-in time. I'm seeing some of your comments and I just really need to check in, see what's going on in the chat. All right, so Lakeisha says being nosy has got you very far. Yes. So you guys, you should be seeing the slides, by the way. If you're not seeing slides, let me know. Because yes, you should absolutely be seeing slides. If not, well, thank you for paying attention to me just talking. All right. All right. You guys say this is helpful for you. Okay, cool. I will be sending out a replay, you guys, so you will get to see these. Yes. All right. So let's go ahead and chat some more about determining who your target listener is. So some of you guys were in the Side Hustle Bootcamp. So some of this you might remember, because this is an exercise that everyone needs to do, whether you're starting a business, a service, podcast, you need to understand who your target person is. So your target listener is your ideal listener. This means this is going to be your diehard fan. You will have what I call byproduct listeners as well, but your diehard fan, your core listener, is who you want to cater your content to. When you make your content very clearly catered to and curate it to your target listener, it helps you to grow your audience faster. So that was one of the huge advantages that Side Hustle Pro has. Now, you do not need to do this by race or gender, but you need to understand who your listener is and curate the content for that person. So this person is going to be your podcast ambassador who will rave about your podcast to others. And again, when I shared that arc, they are going to know your show so well, they'll be easily able to say, hey, you should check out this podcast. It's about X. All right. So when you make sure your show is about X, people are quickly able to share it. If you make it too blurry, too vague, too much touching on too many things, people just say, hey, check out this episode. And you know what will happen when people listen to an episode? They'll listen to it, they'll laugh, or they'll feel away, or they'll get the information and they won't check in again. And you don't want that, all right? So your target listener, they're more than their age and their occupation. They have goals, they have challenges, they have interests, they have dreams. And all of these are things that when you can use to curate your content towards that. So if I know that my person is a side hustler who deals with a lot of fear, like that is one of the core limiting beliefs that my ideal listener has, just limiting beliefs about how they'll be able to do this, if they'll get in trouble at work, if anybody cares, if they can put themselves out there, all these different things. And so I am able to curate my content and my questions toward those kinds of things because I know that they're thinking that. You get me? So same thing for you. When you know who your target listener is, then you know what content to discuss on your podcast because your content is their solution. So step one is you're actually going to have to get on the phone. You're going to have to talk to people. You cannot guess this. So guessing is cool if you want to wait a long time. I have started businesses where I decided, you know what, I don't want to get on the phone this time. And guess what? It takes longer for me to see results with that. But with podcasting, I got on the phone. I got on the phone with 5 to 10 people who I felt would be close to my ideal person. So I was still fine tuning and gathering information. And you are too at this point. You don't need to have pinpointed this person perfectly, but you need to have people who have some of the characteristics. So for me, I got on the phone with Black women side hustlers, women who I knew had a corporate job and who were doing some endeavor on the side and who I knew listened to podcasts. So with those three things, those three criteria met, I was able to get on the phone with them. And then of course I made note and I kept a sheet where I made note of their name, what they did for work, where do they actually want to work, and what do they want to be when they grow up? Because, you know, we're all figuring that out. Where do they live? And also what they do after work on the weekends, where they get their news, what other podcasts do they listen to, what TV shows do they watch, who do they admire, all of these things. And by the way, these questions are not hard and fast. You're basically getting to know your ideal listener, okay? So the questions, some questions may come more naturally to you that are not on this list that help you to get to know your person. You may have questions tailored to your topic, like, what have you done so far to learn about XYZ topic? How do you get support in this area? Or what content do you go to feed this entertainment need that you have, or this release that you need when you listen to podcasts about this? And you're going to make note of their answers, okay? Because again, not only are these answers helping you to get a better sense of who your listener is, they are helping you to get a sense of how you need to tailor your content. A lot of times we start podcasts and we're just thinking, me. I want to talk about this. I wish there was a show about this. And yes, it does start there, but that's why you then have to tap into your target listener so that you are not missing out on things in your blind spots. So you're not forgetting like what it's like. You might not have any fear around starting a side hustle, but there might be tons of people who have that fear. And so if you don't if you don't get on the phone with these people, you're like missing out on that. That's in your blind spot. So make note of their answers. And then once you've done your calls, write a profile of your target listener. And newsflash, secret that I have to remind people sometimes is that this profile is going to evolve. Your target listener is going to evolve, okay? The people who were listening in 2016 when I started Side Hustle Pro, they're in a different place in their life in 2022. So this profile, again, don't overthink it. Don't spend too much time trying to make it perfect because this person is going to evolve. What you need from this profile is to, again, understand who is on the other side of that podcast, who is listening, who has their earpods in, and what do they need to hear from you. So just remember that when you know who your target listener is, then you know what content to discuss on your podcast and where to find your listener on social media. And social media is important because social media is a vehicle for you to get to know people and get them back into your orbit, AKA on your email list, okay? Don't get lost in social media, especially because these algorithms, they change up on you, okay? When we started this program, we were heavily focused on Instagram. Now we're moving into areas like TikTok and we're doing more there. But at the end of the day, all of these platforms exist for the same reason. And that is to help us connect with the person who needs our content, because our content is their solution, and bring them back into our orbit so they can continue to stay connected with us. So I'm going to do a quick Podcast Moguls case study so you can see how to use social media to find your target listener. So you can do this using Instagram. You can do this using other social media platforms. This case study is focused on Instagram. All right. So, all right, cool. You guys are seeing the slides. Great. All right. So I want you to meet one of my Podcast Mogul students. This is an OG, meaning she's been in the program for over 4 years or joined 4 years ago. Ashley of the Stacks in the City podcast. So this is Ashley, and she used what I teach inside of Podcast Moguls that I'll share with you tonight, which is called the OMG formula. So she used the OMG formula to do exactly what I'm teaching you guys, which is to put your content in front of people that need that content, gain those first 1,000 downloads, then move those people on into your orbit by bringing them onto your email list and making sure they stay connected with you. So like I said, Ashley's podcast is Stacks in the City. She's now evolved from Stacks in the City into doing more around her real estate work. So she started with the OMG formula to build up Instagram. So OMG, the O, the M, and the G each stand for a step. The O is obsessively audit, meaning you are going to essentially look for the places where your ideal listener is hanging out. Once I know my target listener is Janelle from Harlem, who works at American Express, who's trying to start a shea butter business on the side, who loves listening to podcasts about people who did just that to keep herself motivated. I know who she's following on social. I know where she's hanging out online. And so I can go to things like the hashtag. I can go to things like the pages that are her favorite pages, and I can audit what's doing well on this hashtag. Oh, is it like infographics that share information? This is an example from what would be Ashley's case when her podcast was about finance and personal finance and investing and things like that. I'm going to look up what's doing well on those pages. So that's what I mean by obsessively audit. Start to get content ideas. To this day, I have, how you can have favorites on Instagram? I have favorites like Reels ideas or post ideas to go back to because I know, hey, I want to test this out. When you obsessively audit, you are getting information for content ideas to try out later, not to copy, but to use like the style to see how that information can be relayed to your own audience. Like, hey, I might want to use that song for my reel, or I might want to use an infographic in this format. Now, step 2, you got to go out there and introduce yourself. I always remind people that social media networking is the same as real life networking. All right. You, just like you would at a networking event, go up to people and meet and introduce yourself. It's similarly with social media. You have to let people know you're out there. One of the ways to do that is to follow intentionally, meaning if there's someone out there who is consuming content about Black women entrepreneurs and side hustlers, and I have a side hustle podcast about Black women entrepreneurs who started side hustlers, then I'm going to follow them. And guess what? They're going to come back to my page and say, oh, whoa, I didn't know this existed. This is cool. This is exactly the info I needed. And that's exactly what happened to me and exactly how I started growing Side Hustle Pro. Right now, I've seen the similar kind of thing happening over on TikTok, all right? So make friends, introduce yourself. There's nothing icky about it. We're not just following people randomly. We're intentionally introducing ourselves. And then finally, the G in OMG is to go over that data, all right? Start a business account. Look at your Instagram insights. Take notice of activity, content, and audience, all right? You'll be able to see when people are most active, so that's when you should post. You'll be able to see which content types are performing the best, so you can focus your energy more on those. And you're able to see activity and other things like the likes, the responses, the comments, and making sure that you get a full sense of what's really resonating with your audience. So that's OMG in a nutshell, all right? That is a case study of how to use social media to grow your audience. And once you've grown your audience, then you're able to do things like put links in your bio and get them to actually go to the link and join your email list. So that's the whole goal. Use social media. Do not let it use you. So here's what happened as a result to Ashley after doing OMG, right? She went from having 758 Instagram followers to 1,216 Instagram followers in less than 8 weeks in Podcast Moguls. Now, as you can see, she's grown beyond that. She's now micro influencer level. But in her first 8 weeks in Podcast Moguls, she had that growth. And that might not seem like a lot to you guys, but she also went from having 300 monthly downloads to 1,400 monthly downloads in less than 8 weeks inside of Podcast Moguls. So, let me know if you would like that. That's a 4x jump. If you haven't done the math, like that is a 4x jump in downloads for your show. Do you know what you can do with that kind of jump? First of all, getting in front of the right followers is important because as your followers grow, so do those downloads. And the goal with your downloads, the goal with showing people your show is for that brand awareness. It's for that exposure. And as your downloads grow, your opportunities to make money, to monetize your show grow. So as your downloads grow, so do your opportunities, okay? You have opportunities to position yourself as an expert, land sponsors, and make money from your show and make money from your platform. So now Ashley is able to do things like paid webinars, and she's able to tap into, as she's done her show, she's really zeroed in on, you know what? I want to focus on real estate, and I want to really focus on my investment properties. And now those people who were tuned into her because of her podcast, who also have that interest, are paying for her knowledge in this area. She has not hundreds, but she has tons of investment properties, and she's able to teach people what she's known and what she's able to do as someone who, just turned 30, who has investment properties. So not only that, but Stacks in the City landed in the top business charts on Apple Podcasts. So again, this was in her first 8 weeks inside of Podcast Moguls. You see her as number 179 in the top business podcast. And you guys, there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, okay? So for you to be top 200 in business when there are hundreds of thousands, actually, not that there are millions of podcasts, there are probably millions in business as well. And for you to be in top 200 is a huge, huge deal. Toot your own horn for that. So again, like I said, because of the Stacks in the City podcast and the platform that she created and expanded inside of Podcast Moguls, she has expanded her personal brand and income generating opportunities beyond podcasting. So she has paid workshops where she's able to teach people. So that's what I mean by podcasts sometimes are just your jumping off point. They're your opportunity to get in front of a larger audience. They're your opportunity to, it's like your new portfolio or your new resume. Inside of Podcast Moguls, we meet monthly for a live coaching call, similar to what we're doing now, but you guys would be unmuted and you would get to, we all see each other and we talk. So just in the last one, one of my Podcast Moguls students said, she has been in a place in her life where she hasn't been able to add a new episode, but her podcast is still doing numbers. Every single day, someone reaches out to her for the next episode or to pay her in her business. Like, isn't that amazing? Like, you can be away from your podcast for some time and it's still getting listens every single day. So that's the power of podcasting. So now I've talked a little bit about podcasting. I've talked a little bit about my program, but I want to let me know if you'd like me to show you step by step how to launch and how to grow your podcast so you can make a bigger impact and generate more revenue. I'm actually going to do something I've never done before, you guys, and I'm going to walk you kind of through the program a little bit. So if you're interested in that, all right, I'm seeing some yeses. All right. So I want you guys to know that, we only have a limited time together. So I know right now, some of you might be feeling scattered. You want to launch and grow your podcast, but your strategy kind of feels all over the place, or, you might be feeling stuck because your podcast is not growing fast enough or getting enough downloads. And you know that you have some great content. I've seen some of you guys who signed up, like you have these awesome social posts and you have all this, momentum behind you, but the lack of a proven blueprint is kind of holding you back because you don't know what you're doing, to be quite frank. Um, and you might even be feeling like you know the value of having a powerful platform like a regular podcast, and you're just ready to do what it takes to grow it. So you guys, option one, you can keep trying to DIY your podcast with the tips gathered all over social media and YouTube. Part of the issue with that, though, is that you just don't know who people are. Like, every day somebody makes a video and they sound very passionate, right? And they're like telling you, here's what you do. But who are they? What are their results? You guys, you know my results. You've seen 8 million downloads, Podcast Hall of Fame, making money from my show. I do this full time. So that's the problem with gathering tips here and there from social media. You can't really vet everyone's results. So option two is you can decide to make podcasting a priority. All right. And you can use my proven roadmap that tells you exactly where to start and what steps to take. So I invite you to do that, and you're invited to join me inside of Podcast Moguls. And if you don't know, Podcast Moguls is an accelerator program that teaches my proven effective marketing strategies to podcasters who want to increase their downloads, grow their podcast audience, and monetize their show. So I'm going to do what I said, which is something I haven't done before. And I'm actually going to take you over to the sales page. So let me know if you guys can see this. If you go over to podcastmoguls.com/join, let me know if you can see. Give me a yes in the chat if you can see this, okay? Ramona says yes. Everyone else, okay, cool. All right, so if you go to podcastmoguls.com/join, this is an extensive sales page. I usually take people just straight to the checkout page, just because I know you need more time to read this a little later. So first things first, this price is going away. This course, the value and the information that I'm providing, which I'll walk you through all of that, right? It's really valued at $3,000. I've been doing the promotional price for some time now, but that's going away, okay? And by the end of this year, that's going to be gone. That's going to be gone, gone, gone. But I'm allowing a few more cohorts to come in before that at this price. So within Podcast Moguls, when you press this button, enroll now, you'll be taken to the promotional price, and this cohort, this pricing is going away in 7 days, so next Friday. So you have two options: pay in full, 4 payments of $297. All right, you get to see some student success stories. You get to see some more on the main sales page as well. So essentially, it's for you if you have been spending a lot of time in your head, right? You've been spending a lot of time thinking about starting your podcast, and you just have minimal progress to show for it. And sometimes you're putting a lot of effort into things and minimal progress, right? So you know you have these insights, you know you're funny, or you know that you are very informed about something, or you know that you want to be the liaison, right? The bridge between info and questions, like I am. And you just need some more information about how to do that. So I'm ready to be your coach. That's what I'm here for. I want to see more people using podcasts as a launching pad. No matter what I decide to do in life now, because of this podcasting platform, like people, I'm immediately able to show my skill and my value to the world, right? So I built my podcast from scratch to over 8 million downloads, and I want to teach you how. So like we've talked about tonight, I started out, like most of you guys, with a love for telling stories. I had this calling on my heart to share these messages and my own messages, because, you know, you guys, if you've listened to the podcast, I've also shared my journey from like working at NPR. I've shared moments where I've cried. I've had some really frustrating days where I felt that people overlooked my skill set. And here I am doing all this stuff on the side. And then, you know, at work, I was feeling so overlooked. And I shared that with you on the show. So you've seen that calling on my heart to share that with you guys. I did that through the podcast. And now I have these formulas I can share with you. And I do share with my students everything from how to launch out the gate to how to monetize, how to promote yourself. So inside of the Podcast Moguls program, and I'm just scrolling down here to some of the key metrics and milestones that we touch on. So of course, you're going to learn how to launch a top podcast and how to attract subscribers on day one. You'll also learn how to monetize your platform. So there are different ways to monetize. You get to see my actual sponsorship pitch decks. So how I pitch sponsors, how to decide who to pitch, and what you need, how to get yourself ready to pitch. You'll learn how to market your podcast like a boss, so you can climb up those charts, so you can get visibility, because it's one thing to have a podcast, but very, very few podcasts, number one, very few podcasts keep going and have more than 10 episodes. Very few podcasts get that visibility. And that's something that you really need to be strategic about. So I teach that. And then, of course, the growing your personal brand part comes with all of this, comes with building up your podcast, comes with setting up your website and your email list, which we go over all of that inside of Podcast Moguls. And all of this, I show you how to increase your downloads weekly. So if you've been thinking about launching a podcast, but you don't know where to start, or again, if you and your friends start a podcast on a whim and now you want to learn what it takes to make money and to grow it, or if you're frustrated because you have a good show idea, but don't know how to promote it, this is absolutely the program for you. Because if you keep trying to figure out podcasting on your own, you're basically just wasting precious time while this industry continues to grow and grow and grow. So I want to teach you. I want to teach you to turn your podcast around in 8 weeks. All right. So here's what's included, by the way. First of all, you're a mogul for life, right? So if you join today, you automatically get 4, coaching calls. But quiet as it's kept, truthfully, you can come back to a coaching call whenever you want, okay? Even when I launch Podcast Moguls 2.0 and the price jumps up, you can still come into our live coaching calls, all right? So just know that. So within the course itself, there's an 8-week podcast success curriculum. That means there are 8 modules of courses on demand, 8 modules of lessons on demand that you can jump into at any time. You can watch as many times as you need to, resource documents that come with them to download, print, use. And then you also have our monthly live coaching sessions. So you'll be able to ask me questions every single time you join a coaching session. If you skip a month or, come back later, you'll be able to hit me with what challenge you're dealing with right now. If you miss a class because you can't make it, we do have the replays available, so you can submit your question in advance and hear it on the replay. And then, of course, we have a private Facebook support group and community where you can ask your questions as well in between our classes. And like I said, you are a mogul for life, all right? So there are 2 payment plans. There's one payment of $9.97, and there are going to be some pay in full bonuses, so please go ahead and pay in full if you want those bonuses. I'll share what they are in a moment. And then you can also sign up for 4 monthly payments of $297 to give yourself some more time. So here are the 3 parts again. Here's what's inside. Part 1 is the course itself. And again, guys, we're looking at the quickest way to go here is podcastmoguls.com/join. But it also links to sidehustlepro.co/podcastmoguls. So part 1 is the course, which module 1, we go through refining your topic. So I know everything I said tonight was great for you, but you probably want to go through this at length again. So that's what module 1 is about. Module 2 is about positioning your podcast. Module 3 is about your strategic marketing roadmap. So we get into that road to launch. Module 4 is all about Instagram marketing. Module 5 is all about email marketing, which is so, so important. And all of you guys, if you're here tonight, have received the email from me, and my email list has grown because of the podcast. That is what built my podcast, my email list. So I teach you how to do that. I also teach you about how to do Facebook and Instagram ads. And then module 7 is all about monetization. And we go over how to position yourself, how to get all your ducks in a row, because in order to make money on your show, especially via sponsorships, you have to have certain elements in play. So that module is all about those elements. Then module 8 is about creating your winning pitch. So I go over what you need to put inside of a media kit. If you don't know what a media kit is, this program is especially for you. So I share with you my early media kits that I use, that I went to market with, that landed me my first $4,000 contract after I attended my first sponsorship intensive. So I share with you what has worked and what's currently working, because podcast sponsorship is a very unique lane. It's not like your typical type of thing. So you need to understand how that works, what they're looking for in terms of downloads, CPM, all that good stuff. And plus, I also go over the fundamentals, you guys. So if you don't know what equipment to use or how to set it up or where to host your show and how to publish your show to all the different platforms, don't worry, because I cover that as well. So again, we have part 1, the course. We have part 2, the community, and we have part 3, the coaching. And if you go over to podcastmoguls.com/join, you'll also see our success stories. You know, we have students who are killing it. Tolu, I'll share a little more about Tolu in a second, but she had imposter syndrome when she started. You can click watch now. You can actually hear her talk about this. And, you know, she didn't feel like her voice was worthy. And she ended up starting a podcast called the UI Narrative Podcast that is now sponsored by Google. Similarly, at Dreams of Black Wall Street by Nia Clark, Nia came in with a completely different podcast. She was talking about, I don't even remember anymore, because she completely switched it up like that. And these are the transformations you have inside of Podcast Moguls, because you come in, you realize what you had in mind. Here's where you need to tweak it. Here's where you need to grow it. So these are the testimonials. Again, you can hear from more and more people who've been inside the program and what they've been able to do. So this is the registration page in a nutshell. And this is just a little breakdown of the investment, you guys. So I know sometimes people see a number and they're like, oh my goodness, Nikayla, but here's what you're getting. Like, here's what it actually is valued at. So you're getting monthly live coaching from me, which in and of itself is a $4,000 value. Like if you were to come to me for a session and, you know, want to do one-on-one, that's what it would be valued at just by itself. Then you're also getting private community access. So $2,364, that value number comes from a real Facebook fee that I have seen. Like people are out here charging $197 a month to be in their Facebook communities. And that's not like a lifetime fee. You actually pay that continually each and every year. So that in and of itself is included in the program, no additional cost. You're getting all of my sponsorship pitch letters, all of my decks. And you see why the price is going up, right? Now when I start to list it out for you, you see why the price is going up. So please don't tell me I did not share that the promotional price is going away, because when you come to me and it's $3,000 and it's not going down ever again, you'll be like kicking yourself that you didn't get in now. So please look at the breakdown here. You're also getting my guest pitch templates. So these are the templates I use to pitch everyone on the show, to pitch complete strangers to be on my show. And I've just had an amazing time talking to so many different women and hearing all their journeys. And again, building this awesome network, you know, of people I can now reach out to. I've reached out to former guests with questions, for business advice, so many things. So these pitch templates are golden. Plus, you also receive the Master the Gram program. So this is my program all about Instagram. And this is another one where no matter how many times I upgrade it, you'll always get access. In addition, the Goal Getter Action Plan. This is my system of productivity that I use to juggle my side hustle with my main hustle. So I include the Goal Getter Action Plan to make sure that you guys don't get overwhelmed and you really see that there's a way. It's very short, you know, you can go through it in an hour or so and just really map out how to structure your time so that you can juggle the podcast and your main job. All right. So if you weren't just adding that all up, that's actually an $8,553 value, but your investment is one payment of $997. And again, there's a pay in full. There's a pay in full bonus for that, or you can do 4 payments of $297. All right. And down here, I share a little bit more about myself. And the FAQs, And yeah, ready to join. Come on down. All right. So I'm going to go back over to the slides now. Again, I've never done this before, so I'm actually going to skip over a bunch of slides because we just covered all of that. We just covered what's inside Podcast Moguls. You can go over to podcastmoguls.com/join and actually hear the testimonials. We just covered everything you're getting inside of Podcast Moguls, and that is one payment of $9.97 or 4 monthly payments of $2.97. Cicely says, I love how you start on time and get through the info. Yes, that is my goal here, for you guys to get the info. And also, if you choose to join Podcast Moguls, again, the doors are now open. So the information that you learned tonight is just the tip of the iceberg. I have a lot of information for you guys, and I couldn't possibly cover it in one webinar, okay? So if you are ready to really take your podcast journey seriously, and you want to get coaching, and you want my blueprint, and you want continued support, because it's not just a one-off thing. Like, I show up live and I show up present and available in these groups, and make sure that if you have a challenge, you can reach out to me. So I'm here. All right. Now, one thing I always include in our calls, and we're about to get to Q&A in a bit, so you guys can ask me some more questions. But one thing I always want to cover is my equation that I use whenever I'm making a big purchase. So I say to myself, would it be worth it if? So something that you might ask yourself is, would it be worth it if Podcast Moguls helps you elevate your personal brand, land brand partnerships? Would getting approached with media opportunities be worth it to you? Yes. Then come on down to Podcast Moguls, because that's what we're here to do. So this is what happened as a result of me elevating my personal brand with podcasting. I was on the Today Show in 2019, and I was brought on as their side hustle, passion, and paycheck expert, where I shared my own journey. And what was really cool about this is I was approached by a producer. They found out my information online. Like I said, once you start putting your portfolio out there, you show up higher and higher in the Google rankings once you are consistently putting out content that goes after a single keyword. That's why narrowing down your podcast topic is so important, right? So I'm coming up for side hustle. So they start looking for a side hustle expert, and boom, they come across me and approach me. And so that's how I ended up here. And here's what happened to Tolu of the UI Narrative podcast. So she came in, as I shared before, a little bit of imposter syndrome, confused, just knew that she had a calling on her heart to do something around the user interface and the world of tech that she was in. So through going through the modules and clarifying and refining her topic, she came up with the UI Narrative podcast, and it's now sponsored by Google, because they want to sponsor more people of color, so that more people of color get into this space and understand what's needed to succeed in this space. So when you make your content, there are often people looking for you, looking to get behind you, because they need to get in front of that audience. So that's what happened with Tolu. And so that's what could happen to you. And again, use that equation with would it be worth it to you if Podcast Moguls helped you land features in magazines? So how many of us have seen a magazine article and said, hey, I want to be on this list. I want to be in the Ebony Power 100 or whatever it was just released, or I want to be in the 40 under 40 or 30 under 30 or 50 under 50. You can do it. You just have to put yourself out there. You just have to start letting people know what you do, how you do it. You have to use your voice. And one of the ways to do that is podcasting. So, if that's of interest to you, then definitely come on out over to podcastmoguls.com/join. All right. This is what happened to Shayla of the Black Girls Wine podcast. First of all, don't you just love that name? So guys, the only way to learn is through action though. All right. You actually need to take action. So this question is timely. I just saw someone talk about podcasts and revenue generating. So I have a pay in full bonus for you. So my pay in full bonus is my pitch email that landed me my first $4,000 in sponsorship. You'll be able to see what I put in that email and what I knew that the person on the other end of that email needed to know. So the number one thing they need to know is, guess what? who your listener is. They need to know who your listener is. So the sooner you can clarify your topic, clarify who your listener is, start putting out your content and growing your downloads using the methods that we teach, the sooner you can start generating revenue. And you can choose how you want to generate revenue. You don't have to go after sponsorship. You can, you can sell your own products or services. So keep that in mind as well. Another pay in full bonus, you guys, is my 5-day branding blitz. This is a $297 value by itself. I sell it by itself. So these were the exact steps I used to come out the gate with Side Hustle Pro. Here I am on the left, top 10 in marketing. Here I am on the right, number 37 in business. All right. So these are the steps, and I'm sharing them with you. All right. Another pay in full bonus is my pitch email to Apple. So I pitched Apple Podcast to say, hey, highlight my podcast. I know I'm just an independent podcaster, and you usually just highlight major network shows, but hey, this is a good episode. And they did. So I'm sharing exactly what I wrote, and you too can gather yourself to start pitching Apple for future episodes. The last pay in full bonus, I think this is the last one because I got a couple, but this is the pitch email that landed me my first international speaking engagement in Barbados. It's crazy how, email can really be powerful, but a lot of people, you don't exactly know what to say. And again, rather than you testing it out and getting crickets, I'm sharing with you exactly what I use. This worked. I did not know the event organizer before I pitched him. I was flown out, all expenses paid to speak in Barbados. Amazing trip and vacation, brought hubby along. So I would love to share this with you as well. This comes when you pay in full. This bonus is available to you, okay? And before we get into Q&A, I just want to share a few last power of Podcast Moguls things with you, because you don't have to walk away from tonight's class and not get any more support with your podcast idea. Okay. That's what Podcast Moguls is for. And that's the power of Podcast Moguls. So Dr. Alicia Franklin of the Research Her podcast, she shared this when she first started. She said, she shared her growth chart. This was in our private Facebook community. She said, I started podcasting in November. I had no clue what in the world I was doing, nor how to market the episodes. I just thought the people were going to show up. How many of you guys thought that? I see so many people do this. They start the podcast, they do this awesome promo, they're excited, their people are in the comments hyping them up, and then they think their audience is just going to stay, continue growing each week without a plan. And that's not how it works, right? So Alicia said, I obsessed over the course and I relaunched the podcast within a month of joining the program with so much more vision, thanks to Nikayla. And then she went from hundreds of downloads to thousands. And that's what I want for you as well. So again, this is her growth chart that she shared inside of the community. Similarly, Nia Clark shared this moment when she had an amazing moment. She launched her podcast and within 2 weeks passed 100,000 downloads. All right. And then the BBC reached out to her. BBC News reached out to her to interview her and to produce a 4-minute short video with her narrating the story of the Tulsa Race Massacre. How awesome is that? Like, how powerful is that? Something you start, not only is providing powerful and impactful information, because a lot of people still don't know about the Tulsa Race Massacre. And then you are reached out, someone reaches out to you from BBC News to amplify your podcast and message even more. That's the power of Podcast Moguls. That's the power of podcasting. So I also love what Blunt Blowing Mama had to share. So how amazing is that name? Blunt Blowing Mama, a few sessions ago when I shared I was doing another class, she wrote this on her IG story and, gave me permission to screenshot and post. And she just said, Side Hustle Pro is an amazing podcast coach. As someone who is one of her Podcast Mogul students, I can truly say she helped me get Blunt Blowing Mama podcast off the ground. So Shanitria has been able to grow her Blunt Blowing Mama IG page. She's been able to build up organically a tribe. Just the other day, I see that she now has IG subscriptions because that's how many people are locked in. And, so speaking of monetization, you guys, there's so many ways to monetize, but you have to first hone in on who your target listener is and grow that tribe. Once you grow that tribe and you provide awesome content, the options are endless. Okay. The revenue generation part is endless. It's about you have to really put down that firm foundation though. Okay. Your content has to be solid. You have to really have a solid understanding of who your listener is. All right. So she says, she really knows her stuff. And if you want to really build a successful podcast, then her Podcast Moguls program is worth the investment. You see that? You see that? So again, come on over to podcastmoguls.com/join. You do have a pay in full bonus with option 1, $9.97, and option 2, 4 monthly payments of $297. All right. So this price is going away. This is a promotional price. It is going away. You have until Friday, November 4th at 12 p.m. to capture this price. This program is going back to $3,000 minimum. All right. Because Podcast Moguls 2.0 is coming. And again, you have access to 2.0. All right. I am updating the program and as we speak. And when that is launched, you will never see this price again. So remember, when you pay tonight, you qualify for the pay in full fast action bonus. Okay. So join here at podcastmoguls.com/join. Stop imagining what you could do. Let's do this. Qualify for those bonuses. Remember everything that you're getting. Okay. Thank you so much for staying until the end. Please stick around for Q&A, which is about to start. And if you want to start hosting your podcast for the next month and a half free, go ahead and use code HustlePro you'll get the rest of this month and all of next month free on Libsyn.com. And they often give you a little more extra even than that. So you heard it here first. All right, you guys. So again, here are the bonuses. My pitch email that landed me my first $4,000 in sponsorship, my 5-day branding blitz, my pitch email to Apple that landed me a new and noteworthy, and my pitch email that landed me my first international speaking engagement in Barbados. Cool beans. All right, y'all. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the chat now. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen for one moment. I'm going to make sure that I put this in the chat, by the way. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Oops, what is going on here? Oh, there we go. Stop share. Hey, guys. Hey. All right. So let me make sure that you guys have this link to join. And make sure that you have shared your questions. Sharing it in Q&A is a little bit easier for me to see, but just make sure you share it, okay? And then we can, Shalette said she can't see anything. Shalette will have to, when you get the replay, see even more, alrighty? So let me go head over to Q&A. First things first, because that's a little bit easier for me. So I'm gonna share my screen again, and while I'm looking at the Q&A tab, okay? Oh, it doesn't look like it's, oh, that's because I'm over here. Hold on. All right. Okie dokes. So again, you guys, that is your option. Those are the options. So let's go over to Q&A. Okay, so first question from BB, especially if you're not a known name or celebrity, how did you get people to say yes to being interviewed on your podcast, especially in the beginning when you're still building your brand? How did they know they could trust you? So BB, I am so glad that you asked this because first of all, I do share my pitch templates for guests. Right. So that's a baseline for you. You have a comfortable template to start out your emails with so that they're more impactful. Second of all, when you start your show, if you're doing an interview-based show, or if you just have guests from time to time, you need to start with people who are closer to your network, people who will say yes. And then with that, you need to put out your episodes consistently. When you show a consistent track record for producing your shows, oops, my computer almost fell. When you show a consistent track record for producing your shows, putting out your show consistently and asking thoughtful questions and really doing a thoughtful podcast, that shows that you take care of your guests. That shows that you do have that track record, right? And that you can be trusted. Now, if you're someone, I remember there have been people who reached out to me who did 2 episodes one year, 1 episode another year. And I definitely didn't feel like I could trust them because I didn't think they took their show seriously. So why should I give my time to someone who doesn't take their show seriously, who doesn't respect their own time? They're not going to respect my time. They may never even put out the episode, right? And I know that a lot of that is probably analysis paralysis, but that's still not an excuse for asking someone to give up their time and then not putting out their episode and not promoting their episode. So number one, start with the homies, get comfortable at what you're doing, put out your shows consistently with quality. And then I would say about 6 months in, then start reaching out to people. Or, you can even do it before 6 months. 6 months is more like when I started pitching sponsors, but make sure you have at least a quality amount of episodes out that show that you take care of your guests, that you promote your show, that you do this seriously. And sometimes people will say no. Sometimes you do have to circle back with people after you continue to show your track record, and that's okay. Carolee says, co-host or no co-host? Thoughts? So here's the thing about co-host. That's going to be a question that you have to ask yourself and answer for yourself. And here's why. So I think about co-host as like any business partnership. The number one thing to know when you enter into a business partnership is that a business partnership is like a marriage, okay? Your life might take different pathways, and you have to make sure that you all are going to ride the different ups and downs together. Because if one person is like, oh, I'm doing this now, I'm too busy, then your whole show is and your whole rhythm is going to be off, and you're going to have to either get a new co-host or say, hey guys, now the show is just me. Or sometimes I've seen shows just end altogether, and that sucks if, especially if it's only because of one person and one person wanting to still keep doing it. So only do a co-host if you can really assess and make sure that you guys are going to be on the same page for a long term. All right. Chancellor says, when starting a podcast, how many episodes are good to launch with to balance consistency? So I recommend launching your show with at least three episodes so that people can binge. It's like the Netflix mentality, binge a few episodes and say, hey, I like this show. I can't wait for the next one to drop. So you're going to launch with 3 episodes. The first episode could just be like an intro. Here's what to expect. You can scroll back to the first 3 episodes of Side Hustle Pro to see what I mean. And then after that, establish a cadence that is realistic for you. Don't say I'm going to podcast every day if that's going to make you feel like you're drinking from a fire hose. Start with once a week or even maybe once every other week until you can consistently stick to that. Then move on to more if you want to. But the number one thing there is to make sure your audience knows what to expect. Say, hey, you're going to get an episode from me every Wednesday, every Tuesday, every Thursday, and that's what they'll be expecting. So just stick to that. Michelle T says, is there a good time limit for a podcast? 30 minutes, 1 hour? So Michelle, this is going to depend on your ideal listener, okay? When you know who your listener is, you know what's the ideal time for them. So there are podcasts out there that are 2 hours long. And if you make the podcast any shorter, that perfect listener, that target listener gets upset because that is what they want. All right. If you look at The Read or Getting Grown, you're always going to see an episode that's like 1.5 to 2 hours. All right. Then you look at some shows like The Daily, Up First, some of those news shows, and that audience, that ideal listener wants to get that information quick, fast, just get up to speed in 10 to 20 minutes, 10 to 15, ideally. So the number one thing you can do is really hone in on who your person is, how they're listening, and what their limit is that they can listen to. All righty. Sabrina says, does it ever become stagnant? If so, how do you get your creativity? I think you're meaning like, how do you, everything in life every time you need breaks in life in order to be at your highest creative output self. So that's why you'll see people take a break between albums, AKA Beyonce, between tours, you'll find that people really need to go into their creative zone. So I have definitely, scheduled in those kind of breaks in my creative process. So you'll see I'll post rewind episodes so that I can take a few weeks off to think through, okay, what else did I want to touch on this year? What kind of people do I want to bring on the show? This year I really wanted to talk to more product-based businesses. So I really honed in on that. There are times when I'm like, you know what? I haven't spoken to enough people in this type of business. I want to reach out and find them. Or there are a lot of new changes my producer and I made in the last year and a half. I started video podcasting, and that all came from just having the bandwidth to take on a new element of podcasting, and also sitting through and thinking creatively what I wanted that to look like. So that's consistently something that is evolving, because you're going to have different, inserts of creative energy, inputs of creative energy at different times in your process. All righty. Nisha says, I have not started a podcast yet. I have an idea, but I'd like assistance with creating my podcast. Will your program help me turn my idea into a podcast? Yes. So there are a lot of people who start with an idea, like Tolu, who I mentioned. She came in and she knew that she had some ideas, but she had not physically written it down. She did not know it was going to be the UI Narrative podcast. So yes, there are many students who come in and they start from idea to actual evolution. Okay. Now, I'm not going to do it for you if that's what you're asking. Like, we're not going to sit down and, set each thing up together. What I do is give you really precise tutorials so that you can do that yourself. And I take the tech intimidation out of it. Because again, I'm not a techie person. A lot of times with tech too, we just have to take a breath and say, all right, how do I do this? Just like you saw in the beginning of this webinar, I was like, all right, why is the chat turned off? I turned off camera, screen share for a second, took a breath, looked at it, and was able to figure it out. So I will absolutely support you, and you're going to do it yourself, and you're going to rock it. Toya says, I am at the idea stage, video or just voice podcasting? Just voice podcasting when you start. All right, guys. I know we're seeing all these cute video clips going around on TikTok and Instagram. However, at its core, podcasting is an audio first platform. Hear me again. Podcasting is an audio first platform. All right. The downloads that matter the most, the stats that matter the most for sponsors when you go out and you're doing a sponsor campaign, come from audio first podcasts. Audio first platforms. All right. So the video is icing on the cake, is not necessary. I did not start video until 5 years into podcasting. It was my 5-year anniversary switch up. Okay. And I will say that videos are nice to have, but the bulk of my listens are coming from audio first platforms. So don't stress yourself out with videos. Demi says, did you start out editing your podcast episodes? Yes, I did start out editing my podcast. And guess what? I got a cold pitch one day, an email from someone I didn't know, who wanted to offer me a free episode and, to showcase their services. And I am still with that producer today. So I did start out with the editing myself. All right, so now I'm going to switch over I'm going to stop sharing for a second to open up the questions I think you have compiled, Joanna. So hold on one second. Let me go over to my drive. And you guys, it was so nice having you guys here tonight and just chatting with you. It's always like hectic when I am getting ready to do a master class. And then once we're here together, I'm just like, oh, this was amazing. I love this. I'm so glad I do these things. All right. So I don't think any more questions came in via the chat. So if I missed your question, go ahead and ask it again in the live chat. But otherwise, I think that might be it for tonight, you guys. This was very, very fun. I'm so glad that I was able to share my podcasting tips with you guys. Give me a 1 in the chat if you feel more empowered to start your show. Demi says, will Podcast Moguls teach you how to edit? Yes, Podcast Moguls will teach you how to edit your show. And I will teach you how to edit, how I started out editing. And in 2.0, oops, in 2.0, I am going to be working with my editor to do something special to give you some tips and tricks for some of the things that he's now doing with the editing. All right. So with that, you guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you. Shout out to all of the replay viewers. Podcast Moguls cohort is now open. Go over to podcastmoguls.com/join. And if you have any questions, hit me up at hi@sidehustlepro.co. All right. And with that, I will talk to you soon on email.